For my Bible reading each day, I read a portion of the Old Testament, a portion from the New Testament, and then a psalm. So this year I just finished the book of Joshua, and I'm up to Psalm 96, and I'm in the book of Acts for my New Testament reading. So I'd like to share with you something from the book of Acts and chapter 12 that I read this week. Verse 1 says, "About that time, King Herod Agrippa began to persecute some believers in the church. He had the apostle James, John's brother, killed with a sword." These verses go on, the chapter goes on. It says that Herod then arrests Peter, puts him in prison, and it looks like Peter's going to be the next that's going to be killed. And then verse 5 says, "But while Peter was in prison, the church prayed very earnestly for him." And if you're familiar with the story, the account, the chapter goes on to describe how God answers this prayer, and Peter is miraculously rescued, and he gets out of prison. So the chapter begins with this hard news, a major setback for the church. One of the key witnesses, commissioned by Jesus himself to be an apostle and to tell others the gospel, this James, is killed. And James was one of the three, part of Jesus' inner circle, along with Peter and James's brother John, to be disciples who were invited by Jesus to be present and see things that the other disciples didn't see. The raising of a girl from the dead, Jesus' transfiguration, and to be close by Jesus' side when he prayed in Gethsemane before his arrest and crucifixion. And so this important apostle was killed. But this hard news in the chapter is followed by Peter's rescue from prison. So James dies, but Peter doesn't die. And here are two things that I thought about. First, I thought about James' father, Zebedee. He is mentioned when James is called to be a follower of Jesus. James, along with John, is a fisherman, and it says that when Jesus said, "Follow me," that James and John left the fishing and left their father Zebedee, and they followed Jesus. So when James is killed, I thought of his father Zebedee, and I thought about his brother John, and maybe other family members who might have been part of these groups that were gathering in homes to pray after Peter is arrested. And I thought, the great news of Peter's rescue is mixed with grief at the loss of James's death. So here, they receive from Rhoda as he comes to this prayer group, and she tells him that Peter has been rescued from prison. As they're celebrating Peter being alive, their hearts are still heavy with the sorrow over the loss of James. Certainly they're happy for Peter and his family and what this meant for the church, but they're hurting and maybe struggling too. Couldn't God had protected their family member, James, as well? And yet then with faith, and no doubt faith and worship, they said, along with what we read in the book of Job, "The Lord gives and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." And so as I thought about this, I thought of some application, and I thought of families who are in and put in similar situations as James's family were in this chapter. I thought of families that maybe have had a loss, maybe a child who has died, a miscarriage or stillbirth. And they hear of another family who's entering into a similar health crisis. The baby's still living, but there's the potential of loss, and a call goes out for prayer. And then the circumstances unfold, and that child lives, and there's a healthy birth, and there's rejoicing. And how hard that must be to rejoice with that family, even as they remember the loss of their own child. Or maybe others who see a marriage do well and continue when yours is falling apart. And so this thought is what I prayed about and felt. The realization that God may allow tragedy and loss to touch your life, and while He brings rescue to others. That's the first thing I thought about. The second is this, and there's more, but the second I'll share with you is this. That the loss of James and the arrest of Peter moved the church to pray. And moved them to pray, not just routine, casual praying, but the text says in verse 5 that they prayed very earnestly for him, for Peter. A fervent prayer. And so crisis and hardship and loss resulted in prayer. And I just applied this to me. What does crisis move me to do? And I thought, did James' family, did his father Zebedee and his brother John find their prayers more urgent, their prayers for Peter, more desperate, because they knew the heartache of loss? Their sorrow and their loss became the fuel for a level of prayer that they may not have entered into without that loss. The sense of solidarity and feeling Peter's family now vulnerable and facing this threat, the solidarity, the loss that they had moved them. It became a fuel for them to pray more earnestly for Peter. And as a result of that, I was moved to allow losses in my life to pray with a greater passion for those that I knew that were being threatened with similar situations. And I trust that what I've learned from this and what I shared with you would also move you to pray more fervently for those that you love, for those that are facing similar circumstances that have brought loss into your life, and these haven't faced that loss yet. Just the threat of that loss. They're vulnerable now. And as you think of the potential of loss, that you're praying more earnestly for their family and their loved ones. I trust that you will. And I pray that what I've shared with you from my Bible reading this week would be a comfort and be a challenge to you as well. And as you pray, as you read your Bible rather, through this year, I trust that the things that you're learning and that you're growing in will move you to be more fervent in your praying and your following of Jesus.